Today, we preview the 2025 Los Angeles Dodgers with Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and then case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another team preview. Today we've got the Los Angeles Dodgers, and we're joined by none other than Fabian Ardaya from The Athletic. Fabian, welcome to Bucko Banner, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, we're obviously coming off a World Series, a busy offseason for you. You don't really get a break over there, huh?
No, it hasn't really been much of an off season, but I think Dodgers are kind of fine with it. I think they kind of like that they're able to roll over the momentum year to year here.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. So last year, 98-64, first in the NL West, World Series champions. Had a busy offseason too. You got brought in Ryoki Sasaki from Japan, Kirby Yates, Hae-Seong Kim from Korea, Tanner Scott, Michael Conforto, Blake Snell, Clayton Kershaw brought back, Kike Hernandez back, Teoscar back, Blake Treinen back. That's just all the guys added via free agency. And you only lost Jack Flaherty, Brett Honeywell, Joe Kelly, Daniel Hudson, Kevin Kiermaier, and Walker Buehler. Also Ryan Brazier, Diego Cartaya, and Gavin Lux via trade. A lot of moves this offseason for the Dodgers. They were busy. If you had to give a grade, what would you grade this offseason for LA?
I don't think you can give it anything but an A. Just considering, obviously,
I don't know
if you can go. I don't know if you could top a $1.4 billion offseason that they had last year, but I think spending $500 million just to sort of not just run it back, but add to it is kind of. I don't think you can do much better than that, especially considering just about every guy that they wanted, they got. Especially right. Guys like Tanner Scott, guys like that they don't normally target, they still manage to sign. So, yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong there.
Out of all of those names that Scott just mentioned, is there anyone that surprised you? I mean, you just mentioned Tanner Scott, or is there somebody that you put at the top of the list?
I think surprising-wise, I think you can lump Scott and Kirby Yates together just because, this is not a front office that historically is spent on free agent relievers. They usually feel like they can find one in the aggregate, find one off the scrap heap. They did that with Anthony Bonda last year. Ryan Brazier was a guy who had been cut midseason by Boston, who they picked up and fixed. So that's normally the path they go to with relievers, but obviously I don't think there was a more dominant reliever in the last year's postseason than Tanner Scott. And then obviously you're looking at a guy like Kirby Yates, who first off has a track record with the front office with the Dodgers, played under Andrew Friedman in Tampa Bay and was Brandon Gomes' teammate then with AAA Durham. Have that track record and also coming off a great year. So I think those are two guys that I feel like in off seasons past, you wouldn't necessarily see the Dodgers even connected with them, let alone really going to that length to sign them.
I want to pick your brain on this one topic. We're very similar franchises, obviously, Pittsburgh and LA. But we get a lot of comments from our listeners saying that we don't have a strong enough opinion on the spending disparity in baseball. And you got the Dodgers going out and signing pretty much everyone this offseason, and then you got the Pirates signing 1-year deals. They haven't signed a multi-year deal in, I think, 10 years. My opinion is that, while I think there is a spending disparity in baseball, I think there should be more anger put towards the owners of these small market teams that have not done anything, that have stayed stagnant, that haven't spent money like they can. I think Bob Nutting might be like a top 15 richest owner in baseball, and they just haven't spent the money. Their payroll has gone down significantly this year with Paul Skeens on the roster. So interested to hear your thoughts on that, being in the middle of the swamp out there in LA.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to that. I think also you hear fans sort of crying foul if they want a salary cap. There essentially is one in the way that owners approach
de facto. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, in the way that most owners in baseball approach it is they don't want to cross the luxury tax threshold, or if you do, you don't want to do it for multiple years. The Dodgers are kind of in an island of their own when it comes to that. Also, I think the Mets maybe you can loop in there, but just for how much money that they bring in, their willingness to sort of ignore that. Their payroll is probably like $500 million if you include the tax and stuff like that for next year, for this year. And I don't think like enough people realize how much money, especially the last 12 months with Otani, they are bringing in. Like they are doing this, spending this amount of money, and probably still churning a profit. Can every team do this? No. But can a lot of teams do more than what they're doing? I think absolutely. I think you sort of have seen that in years past. The Padres, you're starting to see that with some other franchises where they're able to do that. I think there's other teams like you see like the Cubs and maybe the Red Sox in years past where there's some reasonable frustration that like you are these jewel franchises of the sport and you are not you can't spend competitively with like the Mets and the Dodgers of the world, but you should be able to be spending on the Yankees level. You should be in that sort of range. You should be in the mix for big time free agents and not just a team that's floated around that doesn't make a super competitive offer. And also, obviously, there are issues at the bottom end of spending on the sport when it comes to teams like the Rays. You started to see the A's this year spend more money because they are trying to avoid a grievance. And obviously, like you guys mentioned, the Pirates, where they have the money to spend. Obviously, maybe Pittsburgh isn't the easiest place to lure free agents, but like money talks a lot of times with these guys. And also, when you look at where the Pirates are, like a lot of young, exciting talent, especially on the pitching front, that you would think that be really compelling for teams, especially to be able to maximize this window where guys like Skeens and Jared Jones aren't necessarily getting paid a whole lot.
Yeah, preaching to the choir, man. Preaching to the choir. Let's go through this projected lineup on Fangraphs. DH leading off Shohei. Second at shortstop, Mookie Betts. First base, Freddie Freeman. Right field, you got Teoscar. Third base, Muncy. Catcher, Will Smith. Left field, Conforto. Center field, Edman. And then second base, Kim. Is that around what you would think it's going to be on opening day, or do you have some other predictions?
I think that's a very fair prediction, especially with how things are. Obviously, we'll see how games play and stuff like that. Like, there's a couple questions with Kim, especially like, what does he look like right off the jump? Like, how quickly do the Dodgers try to integrate him? How much of like a runway do you give him, especially as he like makes the adjustment from KBO? There's probably gonna be a lot of things that are thrown on his plate, especially when it comes to the offensive side of things. I think defensively, he looks pretty good out there. He looks pretty smooth, but how much do they want him to see usually pitching? I think they know that the reps are going to help, but also they have the depth of the line maybe to swallow if he has a slow start, but you don't want to sink his confidence too early when it comes to making that adjustment. So I think as of right now, I think that's probably where he's going to be. He's probably going to be that second baseman at the bottom half of the order, but also they have flexibility when it comes to guys like Tommy Edman. Like Kike Hernandez probably can get some starts against left-handed pitching. And also, obviously, it's a tough spot right now for a guy like Andy Pages, who probably will be on the opening day roster before they had signed Kike Hernandez. But he's also a guy who maybe with a big string can maybe force the Dodgers' hand a little bit, especially with a guy like Kim, who does have minor league options. Sometimes you see guys who come over from that side of the world, they sign and they have deals that have clauses that you can't be optioned out to the minors. Kim doesn't have one of those deals. So Kim, if need be, could be in that sort of spot. But I think as of right now, that projected lineup is probably where things are going to be around opening day.
Let's talk about Kim a little bit. I mean, I know you touched on him just now, but I've seen some of your videos and some other people that have posted stuff of him from spring. Sounds like defensively, like he's big league ready already. Like he's going to be an elite second baseman or wherever they put him. Where is the bat at right now? Like where does it profile? Does he have any thump, or is he just more of a bat the ball guy? Can he be a major league bat long term?
I think the best strength he has at the plate is the bat to ball, but I think they do feel pretty optimistic that maybe there's more in there. I think they really like what kind of athlete he is. Like the one thing they keep telling everyone this spring is that he's got like the lowest body fat percentage on the team. And I would say like he's definitely like built pretty well and stuff like that. Like, but I think there's still a lot of work in progress when it comes to the swing. He's kind of talked about how basically they redid his swing completely from where it was in Korea. So obviously a lot of that is probably going to be to try to get to the velocity, try to be more adaptable and be able to handle some of the breaking stuff you'll see in the States. But I think they see potential possibly for a little bit more power than you'd expect. Some good bat to ball. He's a great athlete. You kind of hope that maybe he's that type of maybe different look in the lineup than some of the other guys that they have, and with potential for more. And we saw that last year when he was playing with Team Korea in the national team, he turned around 98 from Bobby Miller for a triple off the wall. Like there is something maybe in there. It's just a matter of how consistent the Dodgers can get to that with him and how early that can happen.
I know Mookie had some time at shortstop last year, but how does LA feel about him taking over full time going into 2025?
I think they're as optimistic as anyone about it. I think their logic, their reasoning is that he'll have an entire offseason to have worked on it. And obviously he has put in a lot of work there. He went to Texas, talked to Troy Tulowitzki about the position. He's been working with Dodgers coaches pretty much every single day of this offseason, finding random high school fields in LA to work at. Dodger Stadium's under renovation, coming down to Arizona early. And the big thing that they kind of have working on, and I think the big thing that was maybe his issue last year was largely the throwing, just because it's a different arm angle throwing from right field, that you kind of have to reteach yourself how to do that, especially in that spot, and figure out what type of defender you are at shortstop. And they feel like they really believe in the guy, which I feel like it's hard to really doubt Mookie Betts and sort of his aptitude for the sport and sort of his ability to adjust on the fly. And I feel like having time maybe will allow that to happen. But obviously, he's doing something that no one's really ever done.
It's absurd.
Like that's the thing. Like there's always going to be that little bit of doubt, which is understandable because no one's really done this before. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, last year, I think for the most part he was fine at shortstop. The throwing was an issue, but he got to both balls. I think that's probably maybe the biggest hurdle for most guys going over to that position, or that's the reason why maybe a lot of guys move off the position. But the throwing, obviously, is something that's going to have to be consistent this year for them to see this long term. But obviously, you look at the bat, you have Mookie Betts' bat at shortstop. That's going to be generating a lot of value, even if he's just an average shortstop.
Right.
Let's jump into the rotation. Right now, it's slated as Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, Sasaki, and Gonsolin. But you have some depth here. I mean, you've got Bobby Miller, who is not right now projected to make that big league roster. Landon Knack, Justin Wroblewski, Nick Frasso, and Ben Kasparius are some other names that are listed as potential guys that could get spot starts. Is this how you see the rotation lining up for opening day, the first five that I listed? I mean, it's nice to have Gonsolin back, but this has to be the best rotation in baseball, if so.
Yeah, and they also have Dustin May in there too. They have to figure out what's going to happen there, because that's a fifth starter race, and like May doesn't have options. Tony Gonsolin, I think, is like 20 service time days away from being out of options as well. And obviously they can slow play both guys. Like they're both coming off major surgery. They can maybe be creative with how they sort of handle it. But like these are two guys with some question marks who are fighting for a fifth starter spot. I know the Dodgers have kind of messaged all winter that they wanted to go 6-man rotation all season. They pretty much will do that, just with April having as many off days as they do. I think from the time they get back from Tokyo till like May 2nd, they have like 7 off days in April. So like you're basically running a 6-man rotation at that point in terms of like the rest you're giving guys. So yeah, that fifth starter race is going to be interesting, but a lot of depth. Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May are guys who each have a lot of question marks, mostly health with both of them. But like they're really talented. And if those are guys you're fighting to get into your rotation, much less like be at the top of your rotation, I think the Dodgers are in a good spot in terms of the upside. Also, but I mean, we saw last season, like some of these guys, all these guys are probably going to go down at some point of the season. And we saw last year where they basically had 3 healthy starts through the World Series.
What's the story with Roki right now? You hear stories about there being potential arm issues. Like, do you think he's going to get 100+ innings this year, or would you bet on the under there?
I was surprised that they said that he's going to be ready to start the season. Like they are sort of having him pitch in Japan and being in the rotation to start the season, just because of that reason. Like they have the flexibility there. They could basically have held him in Arizona, working on stuff, developing on stuff since he's on a minor league deal until like midseason and ramped him up. But I think they want to have him from the start, see how his body adjusts, see how he adapts. And so far, the reports have been pretty good. He threw his first live facing hitters today, and they said the splitter is nasty. The fastball velocity is getting back to where he wants it to be. He's not a complete product. Like he's not a finished product by any means. Like I don't know how good he'll be off this start, just because all the different things that he has to deal with the adjustment, the new baseball, the travel.
He's younger. He's younger for the Japanese prospect.
Yeah, he is. And he's also a lot less experienced. You sort of look at a guy like Yamamoto. I mean, he was a 3-time Saiwo Moore Award winner with like 1,200 innings under his belt by the time he came over, and he was young. Like he's 25.
Yeah.
But like Saki, I think it's like 400 innings in Japan, and like he is so much less experienced than even Yamamoto does. So like there's so much he has to learn and pick up on. He still has to work on pick up on that third pitch. I know he's been integrating that slider, but he really has to nail that down to really be able to turn over a lineup multiple times. So it's a lot of like wait and see, and we'll see like what it looks like in terms of like what the Dodgers want his workload to be. Is he going to sort of start type deal, or how do they kind of want this to look? But it sounds like as of right now, at least he's going to be in the rotation to start the year.
You mentioned, some of these guys are going to go down. Glass now always deals with arm issues. When does Shohei fit into the mix here?
They keep throwing around May and possibly sooner, but I think May is a way to sort of manage the innings on the front end, sort of like they did with Walker Buehler last year. He started throwing bullpens here. The hope is that he'll be facing hitters by the end of spring training, and then they kind of have to be really creative with how they handle his rehab, because it's not like he can go out on a minor league rehab assignment because he has to be in the lineup every single day.
Yeah.
The way the Angels kind of handled it when he went through his first Tommy John was basically having guys come up to Angel Stadium and face him in simulated games that day. Usually he wouldn't be in the lineup that night. Obviously, we'll see how it kind of plays out because you still want his bat out there. But yeah, like they're going to have to be really creative about that. But I think at least on the front end, they're kind of going to manage his innings, manage his workload, especially because he's already providing so much on the other side of the ball.
Real quick, we got the bullpen to go through. Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, Blake Trinan, Kopech, Alex Vessier, Anthony Banda, Michael Grove. Dustin May is projected as a long man right now. I don't know if that's a role that they'll put him in to start the season. But you also have guys like Giovanni Gallegos and Luis Garcia that have high leverage experience with other clubs. And then you've got Brusdar Gratterall and Evan Phillips that are currently injured, I believe. So is this one of the more deeper bullpens that the Dodgers have had in years past?
I'd say so. I think last year's bullpen was definitely very deep. You sort of saw like how much they relied on down the stretch. But even then, like some of those guys started to break down. Alex Vessier had to miss time in CS. Evan Phillips wasn't on the World Series roster because of injury. Michael Kopech was pitching through a forearm thing all October. And now I think they're going to be in a position where Kopech and Phillips probably start the season on the IL, more as a precautionary measure as anything else. I think having a long man is going to make a lot of sense, especially with guys like Gonsolin and May not having minor league options left. So you kind of have to have one of those guys down there. And then, yeah, I think some of the guys they've added as NRIs, whether it be Gallegos or a guy like Luis Garcia, make a lot of sense. They sort of fit into the picture. And also guys like that they add to the 40-man roster, like Edgardo Enriquez, who was on the postseason roster last year, throws really, really hard. One of their better prospects. A guy like Jack Dreyer, who was a surprise addition to the 40-man roster, but has been really, really good after being a non-roster, undrafted free agent just a few years back. So like they definitely have a lot of depth there. They didn't have a ton of optionality in terms of guys they can send up and down, which is part of why they flipped Brazier to the Cubs. But like they are a very veteran-laden group, and I think you have some depth behind it that you'll probably see at some point this season.
Is there a prospect, whether that be at the lower levels or, like you mentioned, somebody that can contribute this year, possibly in the pen, that you're looking forward to watching?
I'll go with guys who haven't debuted yet because I think Enriquez is kind of the slam dunk there. I know a guy like Dalton Rushing is consensus top 100 prospect in the sport, and he probably will be up at some point this season. Dave Robertson's already said like his bat is major league ready. It's just a matter of refining behind the plate and also finding a runway for him because obviously Will Smith's established behind the plate. You have so much depth everywhere on this roster, but he is a guy who is big league ready, at least offensively, and he's going to be a guy who they think is going to be an impact back going forward. So he's a guy who stands out to me, and also a guy like Alex Freeland.
Yeah.
Rise significantly over the last 12 months. Like he's a guy who's now on top 100 lists, really up to his contact rate and I think if the bat plays there, then the shortstop glove is going to matter a lot. And he's probably the highest rated shortstop prospect they've had since Lux.
Yeah, I think Alex Freeland's a prospect I'm really interested in, just given the speed, the defense, and the bat potential there. It seems like he has a pretty high ceiling. If you were to suggest a pick to click for this year for the Dodgers, a guy that is going to be a breakout candidate or someone that's going to be an X factor for this team to it's funny saying the Dodgers taking it to the next level. But who is that pick to click for you?
It's tough with a team like the Dodgers because it feels like no matter who you pick, it's someone who's not going to start the season on the big league roster.
Sure,
so I'll go Bobby Miller just because this was a guy who 24 months ago or 2 years ago was starting playoff games for them. You got had these sky high expectations from last year. Obviously, last season did not go well for him. He was never really healthy. The shoulder was bothering him. His knees were bothering him. I think among starters with at least 50 innings pitched, he had the worst ERA in baseball. The Dodgers were scrambling for starting pitching in the postseason, and they sent him down. That's how poorly he was pitching. But he's also a guy who's extremely talented still. He still throws triple digits. The slider, when it's on, is a really devastating pitch. The changeup is really what opens everything up for him. I think mentally, he's going to be in a spot where he has to take that step forward. He has to not let things spiral on the mound for him. He has to be able to think through that bats a lot better rather than just trying to bully his opponents. And I think he's got a good mentor in that, at least to start this spring training. He's been kind of attached at the hip when it comes to Blake Snell. And I think that's a guy who you look at guys with premium stuff who know how to really get swings and misses and be effective. That's one of the better guys in baseball for that. So I think if he can learn and pick that up and also just maybe get back stuff-wise to what he was 2 years ago, he's a guy who I think has a chance to really have an impact when it comes to the rotation, especially because there's going to be so many opportunities with guys going up and down.
Before we let you go, let's get a 2025 prediction. Doesn't have to be a win total, but it could be a specific player, win total, World Series. What do you got?
It's tough to say anything but World Series or bust for the Dodgers at this point. It's crazy to say last year was the first year they didn't win 100 games in a full season since 2018, and that was the year they kind of broke through. But this is one of the more dominant rosters on paper that I've ever seen, and I think you see that it kind of has to play out that way in October. I think they've built this team to be October proof. If the pitching doesn't work,
right,
it's supposed to be dynamic. If the pitching is not healthy, you have a dominant bullpen, vice versa, something like that. So they are trying to foolproof this roster to make sure that there's no way that it doesn't work out for them, and we'll see. But obviously, you don't spend this much and not have it be anything but the World Series.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. This is a very dominant roster. But with that said, we'll see you in the NLCS, Fabian. No, I'm kidding. Appreciate you coming on, man. It was great talking Dodgers. I mean, this is one of the best teams in baseball, and look forward to maybe doing something with you in the future.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Or the steak by the plates and